I have a burden, yes. How easy is it? How often do we walk around with burdens that we act like they're not there? Wouldn't it be easier if you put that down? Oh, I'm okay. It's not a big deal. It's not too bad. I have no idea how much this is, but it's way more than I should be carrying. But I'm okay. Don't worry about me. I'll be all right. We'll get through this. So it'll be okay. And in our lives, it's easy to carry burdens. It's easy to have things that we walk around with every day, that we struggle with, that we fight with, that we deal with, and figure, oh, it's not that bad. It's not that big a deal. But it is. It's just a big deal. And life gets so much easier if we deal with that which is holding us down. The series title at this time is The Weight We Carry. And I don't know if you understand the connection here, but there is a connection. Okay. It's quite a bit of weight. Today specifically, we're talking about the weight nobody talks about. Because many times we have things that nobody talks about. And often that means things that are unseen. Is that fair? That means nobody really sees it. That means nobody really sees us. And if we are unseen, we lose our value, our place in the world. And we wonder sometimes if there's anybody there that knows what's going on. The weight nobody talks about, the unseen weight, the unseen pain, the unseen sorrow, the unseen things. But even though it's unseen, it is very real. It's no less real just because we can't see it or nobody can see it. Doesn't mean it's any less real. And there's a number of areas I want to focus on this morning, a number of areas, unseen pain we want to talk about. But they're all very real, and they hold us back. They hinder us. They make life harder. First of all, I would like to turn to 1 Samuel. The book of 1 Samuel chapter 1. We have a story there of pain, a story of misunderstood pain, of hidden pain. But I think before we get there, I want to take this off. Steve and Mike, could you come up and help me? Is that okay? Maybe that'll make it easier. Yeah. Just set it on that chair. I don't want it on the floor, okay? You can see why I wanted two of you up here, because I know what it's like. Thank you. Thank you. Life is much easier now. Very good. Unseen pain. My pain, obviously, my weight, my burden, my anchor was not unseen. But here in 1 Samuel chapter 2, we have a story of a lady. There was an incredible pain. And she was burdened from every way. And 1 Samuel chapter 1 verse 2 says, Elkanah had two wives. That was his first problem and their first problem. He had two wives. Had somebody in, there are many countries in the world where more than one wife is acceptable for the man. And there are some where more than one husband is acceptable for the woman. But we were in, I think it was Malaysia. And he was a Muslim man. We were at his restaurant, and we're eating, and his restaurant is on a boat out in the river. So when they wash the lettuce off, they reach down in the river and shake the lettuce around and serve it to you. So I didn't eat any salad at that restaurant, needless to say, because I knew what else went on in that river. So he asked me, how many wives can you have? Or how many wives do you have? I don't remember exactly which. And I said, 1. And he said, I think, anyway, he had 2, if I remember right. He had, I can have 2, or I can have 4, I think he said. And I said, why? Why? Why would any man want more than 1 wife? I couldn't figure it out. It didn't make sense to me. But anyway, that's the way they lived there. So Elkanah had 2 wives, Hannah and Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah did not. Big problem. Each year, Elkanah would travel to Shiloh to worship and sacrifice to the Lord of heaven's armies, to the Lord of heaven's armies. I like that phrase. At the tabernacle, the priests of the Lord at that time were the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas. On the days Elkanah presented his sacrifices, he would give portions of the meat to Peninnah and each of her children. And though he would loved Hannah, he would give her only 1 choice portion, because the Lord had given her no children. So Peninnah would taunt Hannah and make fun of her because the Lord had kept her from having children. Year after year it was the same. Peninnah would taunt Hannah as they went to the tabernacle. Each time Hannah would be reduced to tears and would not even eat. It's a story of pain. It's a story of very real pain. And she was hurting not just when she was at church worshiping, not just when she was at the sanctuary there. She was hurting bad all the time. And then, of course, Elkanah chimes in verse 8. Why are you crying, Hannah? Elkanah would ask, why aren't you eating? Why be downtrodden just because you have no children? You have me. Isn't that better than having 10 sons? This is, as a good husband, this is not a winning proposition. This is not a winning argument. Am I not better than 10 sons? She'd have given, one son would have been fine, and she could have done without his support. But anyway, life was like that. And so she had a very rough life. She was beaten down, horribly beaten down. And she gets to the temple, and once after a sacrificial meal at Shiloh, Hannah got up and went to pray. After the meal, she went to pray. Eli the priest was sitting at his customary place beside the entrance of the tabernacle. Hannah was in deep anguish, crying bitterly as she prayed to the Lord. This is a lady that's in deep distress and deep sorrow and deep anguish. She's hurting bad. Notice what she does with it. She takes it to the Lord in prayer. I like that. The lady knew where her source of strength was. She knew where her source of hope was. And she took it to the Lord. She was in deep anguish, crying bitterly as she prayed to the Lord. And she made this vow, O Lord of heaven's armies, if you will look upon my sorrow and answer my prayer and give me a son, then I will give him back to you. He will be yours for his entire lifetime. And as a sign that he has been dedicated to the Lord, his hair will never be cut. That's a dangerous prayer. That's a risky prayer. That's a hard prayer. What she wanted most, she was going to give back to the Lord in a mighty way. Not because she didn't want it herself, but because of her commitment to him. As she was praying to the Lord, Eli watched her, seeing her lips moving but hearing no sound. He thought she had been drinking. Must you come here drunk, he demanded. Throw away your wine. And now she's horribly misunderstood. Beaten down, broken, misunderstood. Oh, no, sir, she replied. I haven't been drinking wine or anything stronger, but I am very discouraged, and I was pouring out my heart to the Lord. Don't think I am a wicked woman, for I have been praying out of great anguish and sorrow. It's okay to cry to the Lord. It's okay to cry out in deep anguish. It's okay to seek the Lord seriously with our whole heart, with everything we've got. It's easy for us to come to the Lord and, Lord, bless the missionaries and call porters, and Lord, bless this and bless that, with no heart in it. Hannah came with her heart in her prayer. She was committed to what she was praying for. Great anguish and sorrow. In that case, Eli said, go in peace. May the Lord of Israel grant the request you have asked of him. Oh, thank you, sir, she exclaimed. Then she went back and began to eat again, and she was no longer sad. And we know when the time came, she had a son, and after she weaned her son, she took him back to the sanctuary and left him there to be trained, and he was the next high priest of Israel for so many years, doing a great work for the Lord. She gave him to the Lord. Now, several things. I personally, we as a family never had fertility challenges. We had all the children we wanted. Let me just put it, all the children my wife wanted. She didn't want a big family. She was the oldest of 6, and she didn't want any more kids, or she didn't want any kids. But eventually she relented and decided maybe she should. And they were the joy of her heart. But the sorrow of being misunderstood, the sorrow of not having children, of being barren, of being by yourself, of not having anybody to support you, it weighed her down. It was horrible. It was awful. But there are other sorrows that are just as hidden. There's the sorrow of grief. And we've all experienced grief at different times. I lost my mom 2 years ago, I guess, a little over 2 years ago. Lost my father maybe 10 years before that. It's been maybe 15. It's quite a while back. Grief is hard. But I lost my wife 6 years ago. And there was no sorrow. There was no grief, no anguish that hit me, like Shirley passing away. And it's tough. And we wonder, and we doubt, what can we do when somebody's experiencing grief that's not visible on the surface? You don't see that my arm is broken, I am in pain, or something else. This church, if I were to give it a grade, did quite well. I was very pleased with the support I got during my deepest sorrow. You talked to me, you helped me, you supported me, you were there for me, and I appreciate that. Had a friend, I was at Walmart. This was, I would say, within 2 or 3 weeks of Shirley's passing. He saw me at Walmart, and he attends another church in the valley here, and he didn't, he had heard that Shirley had passed away, and he hadn't seen me since then. And so he came up to me and says, "Oh, sorry for your loss," or "Sorry for Shirley," or whatever. And then he said, "Immediately," or maybe I shouldn't bring that up. And that was an interesting comment because he was uncomfortable and he didn't know what to do. But did he think I would maybe not think about losing my wife? It's been 2 or 3 weeks. And if nobody brought it up, I would forget and I would go through, maybe the rest of the week without remembering. No, initially grief is very, very painful. It hurts. And it's like, if you go to Portland and you look to the west, you see, or the southwest maybe a little bit, but you see Mount Hood there. And it's very dominating of the landscape on a clear day. You can see it and it's there. It jumps out at you. But the farther you drive away from it, the more it fades in the distance. And grief is like that. Mount Hood is still there, but it's much farther out. And the grief is not nearly as sharp, nearly as painful as it once was. And there's grief of all kinds of kinds. I mean, like I said, my wife passed away. Some of you have lost spouses. And that's tough. It's not easy. It's not easy for anybody. And it gets easier over time, but it's not something that we can ever forget. There's other kinds of grief and kinds of things and kinds of silent pain, hidden pain, that hold us back. And many times we may not see it, we may not understand it. There was a man that got some friends together, and they decided to there's a sailboat race every year from, I think it's from LA to Hawaii, or maybe San Francisco to Hawaii, I'm not sure. Anyway, but they joined the race, and this was just right after he finished, right after he finished graduate school. And they got on their boat, and they took off, and they threw a few cans of stuff in there, and they had provisions for what they needed, and they had a basic idea of how long it would take, and they were part of a race, an actual race that happens every year. And they sailed to Hawaii, and they had the equipment they needed and the people they needed and everything was good. But he noticed after they traveled for a little while that suddenly things were not moving as quickly. The boat wasn't moving as quickly. And they adjusted the sails and they worked on the rudder and they did everything they needed to do, but the boat wasn't moving as quickly. What's going on? Why are things going so slow? What's happening? And they didn't know. They couldn't understand what was happening. Eventually, they made it to Hawaii and pulled in there, and then they looked around to realize what was going on. And to understand what was happening, you need to realize a sailboat has a rudder, not a rudder obviously that steers the boat. It goes down in the water a short distance. But a sailboat with a sail on it, a single hull, has a keel, we call it, yeah. It's a long keel. Often at the bottom of the keel there's some lead to help keep the boat upright so the boat can tip, but always it will return to normal when you head into the wind. Anyway, but it helps keep the boat moving and keep things going smooth. Well, when there's a keel down in the water, what's going to happen? It's deep in the water, thousands of miles. And any kelp or any seaweed or anything that happens to be anywhere near the boat is pulled in. And when they got to Hawaii, they realized why they were one of the last ones to finish the race. Because they had a huge bunch of kelp and seaweed that they were towing along with them. There are so many things that can slow us down, so many things that can hinder us and make life harder. What do? How do you solve the problem? Get rid of that which is slowing you down. Get rid of that which is holding you back. Figure out what's holding you back and get rid of it. The Bible says, I'm not doing very good here, but the Bible, in Hebrews chapter 12, there's a powerful couple of verses there. 12. Hebrews 12, verses 1 and 2. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. We do this, how? We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. Because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame. Now he is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. Let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. How? How do we strip off the sin? Well, me taking off this heavy weight was a huge advantage to my moving around and my mobility. Makes life so much easier for me. It's easy to have things that hold us back, that hold us down, that make life difficult for us. And we don't need to allow those things to hold us back. We don't need to be held back by those things. Going back to Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3. We find some other things that have come into our lives as people that slow us down, that make life difficult. And you know the story well. You know it so well about the woman had gotten separated from her husband and was walking in the garden, and she came to the tree, and the serpent started talking to her. And starting with verse 6, it says, the woman was convinced. The serpent had talked to her. She listened. She heard what he said. She saw that the tree was beautiful and its fruit looked delicious, and she wanted the wisdom it would give her. She believed the lie. She believed the lie. How often do we believe the lie? How often do you believe what the devil tells you and think it's true? Oh, life will be better if you do this. Life will be better if you do that. She believed the lie. Oh, my friends, don't believe the lie. Don't believe the lie. She looked at the fruit. The fruit looked delicious. The tree was beautiful. and she wanted the wisdom it would give her. So she took some of the fruit, and she ate it. Then she gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate it too. At that moment their eyes were opened, and they suddenly felt shame at their nakedness. Shame is another thing. It's hidden. It's unseen. When you look around, you don't know who's walking around with shame on their back. You don't know who has what that they're carrying. You can't see it. It's not all out in the open. Shame is a hidden thing, but it's there, and it's from the very beginning. Adam and Eve had no shame. They were naked, and there was a garment of light that covered them, and they felt perfectly at peace in God's world there. They had everything they needed. But after they ate the fruit, after they listened to the lie and believed it, they felt shame. They suddenly felt shame at their nakedness. So they sewed fig leaves together, and we know how that worked out. When the cool of evening breezes were blowing, the man and his wife heard the Lord walking about in the garden. So they hid from the Lord among the trees. Then the Lord God called to them, "Where are you?" He replied, "I heard you walking in the garden, so I hid. I was afraid because I was naked." So we have shame. And we have fear. These are very real things we deal with. And the reason fear is so ubiquitous out there, everybody's afraid of one thing or another. And it's gotten to the point in our country where, well, let me just say it, I guess. Republicans are afraid of Democrats, and Democrats are afraid of Republicans. It's like they're afraid that if they talk or if they touch, they might get contaminated or something. The animosity and the anger and the level of discomfort is very real. Fear originated in the garden. It's still very much a part of our lives. It doesn't need to be. We have a God that wants to set us free. He wants to liberate us from everything that's holding us back, everything that's slowing us down. He wants to make life easier for us. And Adam and Eve felt guilt. Fear and shame and guilt. They realized they'd stepped out of what God wanted them to do. They had gone their own way. And as soon as God asked Adam why he ate, of course, he blamed his wife. And as soon as God asked her what was going on, she blamed the serpent that God had created and blamed God ultimately. Fear and guilt and shame, they're part of who we are as a people. And God doesn't want us to be that way. He doesn't want us to be tied down. He doesn't want life to be that way. In Luke 4, we have a short passage where Jesus, we find out what Jesus, Luke 4, starting with verse 16. And Jesus, Luke 4, here we are. It's not going to work. Just a second. Luke 4, verse 16. There we go. Luke 4, verse 16, starting there, verse 16 to 19. Talks about Jesus. It says, when he came to the village of Nazareth, his boyhood home, he went as usual to the synagogue on the Sabbath and stood up to read the scriptures. The scroll of Isaiah the prophet was handed to him. He unrolled the scroll and found a place where this was written. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim that captives will be released, that the blind will see and the oppressed will be set free, and that the time of the Lord's favor has come. Oh, Jesus had a message of freedom and liberation. He wants to set us free. He doesn't want us to be tied down. He doesn't want us to be held back. He doesn't want us to be slowed down by anything in this world. Anything that we do or anything that happens to us, he wants us to have freedom. Jesus, he wants that for us. And there's another sin that so often we don't talk about, that nobody else sees, and that's the issue of lack of forgiveness, of holding on to grudges, holding on to past pain, that where we've been hurt. When I was in Hong Kong, I had an opportunity to visit many people. Many said it was the best hospital in Hong Kong. It was, historically, it was an American hospital manned by American physicians, and the level of care was quite high. When President Clinton came to Hong Kong when we were there, we were on what they called White House watch or something like that. And he never came, but if he would have needed a hospital, that's probably where they would have brought him if it would have worked out. And while there, I visited people from, we had ways of dividing our list. The list every day that we got the report was the patients in the hospital, who's in the hospital, what room are they in. And then it would say basically their language preference. And the language preferences were Cantonese, which was the local language there, Mandarin, which is mainland China, Cantonese and Mandarin, and English and other. Well, we had a Chinese chaplain there that could speak Cantonese and Mandarin, so she covered the two Chinese languages. I obviously was incompetent there. And I took those that said English and other. And the other was sometimes German, sometimes, there's various languages throughout Europe. Most people could speak more English than they could Cantonese, let me just put it that way. So anyway, one day I got my list and I went down, there was a lady on the list I hadn't seen before, and we'll call her Linda. And I stepped into Linda's room, knocked on the door, stepped in, and said I was the chaplain, introduced myself. And she's there, and she's, I don't know, probably in her 30s, mid-30s maybe, I don't know exactly, but very well put together. She didn't look like she had a problem in the world. Everything was good. Her hair was clean, neat, put together, just very prim and proper, and I told her who I was and started talking to her, and found out she was from Canada. That's where she'd grown up, and she had married a man from another country, and they were having some challenges in their home. And I wasn't sure what was going on, but we started talking, and she started sharing what was going on. And the more she started sharing, the more animated she became, and the more angry she became, and the more vitriol poured out of her mouth. And she's, like I said, a very well put together lady, and it's hard to understand why somebody like that has that kind of pain. But she's hurting bad. And come to find out, her mother-in-law, that is his husband, she had grown up in another country where having servants in the home was a very common thing. And people in, better society always had servants. And so she was used to somebody caring for her, providing what she needed, And Linda shared how things were hard in their home because Mom had moved to Hong Kong, and Linda and her husband didn't have any servants in their home. And so Linda bore the brunt of it. And so Mom would want orange juice, and she would, make her orange juice every morning. She made her orange juice. And one time Linda had to go out early, and she told Mom, I'm not going to be able to make your orange juice fresh this morning. And so she showed her how to take the can, the frozen, and you dump it in, 3 cans of water in there, then you stir it up, and she came back, and the orange juice was unmade. Another time, Grandma needed to get her hair cut, and she didn't want to go out. The streets are busy and noisy and traffic is bad. And so Linda began to look to try to find somebody that could come into the home and cut her hair. And she finally found somebody, and the lady came in and cut her hair. But she wouldn't come back again. There was a daughter in the home, a young daughter, maybe 12 or so. And it was so bad that the daughter was afraid to stay with her grandma. She was so angry. She was so upset. And she had so much going on in her heart. And then as we talked a while longer, I realized she told me she doesn't know why I'm in the hospital. And she had some kind of GI upset. I don't know exactly what it was, but something going on. And it was largely due to the stress she was under, the pain she was feeling. And she doesn't even know I'm in the hospital. She doesn't know that's why I'm here. And she wouldn't understand if she did. And she just went on and on and on. And she was angry. She was angry. She was angry. And I don't do anger very well, okay? I don't like it. It's painful. It's ugly. It's hard. And I wasn't sure what to say. But finally, she had shared quite a while and poured her heart out. And there were other patients that I needed to get by and see. So I listened to her, and finally I said, well, would it be okay if I shared with you a little bit? And she says, yeah. And I said, Linda was probably not from a Christian background. Her husband, I would say, was definitely not. I don't think she saw herself as a Christian. But I said to her, a lot of pain. Yeah. Well, you could forgive her, I said. And if you thought she was angry before, it was like we lit the firecracker. I mean, it was incredible. Forgive her? How could I forgive her? She doesn't even know she's hurting me. She doesn't know I'm in the hospital because of her. She doesn't deserve my forgiveness. She hasn't asked for forgiveness. She doesn't want my forgiveness. Why would I think of forgiving her? She could not imagine it. And forgiveness is a very Christian thing. It's not embedded into other cultures like it is into Christianity. And it was dragging her down. It was hurting her. It was slowing her horribly. And I says, well, could I tell you a little story? And a few months before, maybe sometime in the year or two before that, we had come home on furlough. And Shirley's, my wife's sister, was in Alaska. Her husband was in Fairbanks at the military base there. And so we stopped in Fairbanks as one of our layovers. They had layovers they would allow us on the ticket. And we stayed there about a week or so. I don't remember. And one of the first mornings I was out jogging, and getting over jet lag in Fairbanks is not the ideal because it tends to be light pretty much all the time there. But I went by a meeting hall or a church, probably some kind of business club or something. And there was simply a line on there. And it sounded like some ancient Eskimo wisdom or something. And it said, and I'm telling this story to Linda, it said, remove the rock from your shoe rather than learning to limp comfortably. And she gets this confused look in her face. But she knows what I'm saying. She hears me. And she doesn't know how to deal with it. She doesn't know how to let it go. She doesn't know how to find the healing she needs. She doesn't know how to find the freedom that the Lord has for her. But finally, as we wound down, I said, I need to go see some other patients. Would it be okay with you if I had a little prayer with you before I left? And she'd be okay. So I had a prayer for her. And I just prayed that the Lord would help her find it in her heart to forgive her mother-in-law, to let it go, to find healing from the pain and the hurt. And earlier, when I was telling you about her husband or her mother-in-law, how angry she was, she had anger obviously toward her mother-in-law, but also things were difficult with her daughter, and things were difficult with her husband. In fact, things were so bad with her husband, sometimes she would say, oh, you're just like your mother. And he knew what that meant. And of course, he shrinks down a little more. Didn't know what would happen. After I went back the next day, she was still there, getting ready to get out, it looked like. And she invited me in. I sat down again. And it was a different room. It was transformed. There was peace in that room. And she shared. And she didn't understand many things. But she shared how her husband had come the night before. And they had watched a movie. And they had actually held hands during the movie. And it had been a long time since they'd done anything like that. And he asked her, what happened? And she said, oh, I talked to the chaplain. And he said, well, you better talk to him some more or something like that. So anyway, it was tremendous for me to see what can happen when people are willing to forgive. There's all kinds of hidden pain that slows us down, all kinds of things that hold us back. Don't let those things hinder your walk with the Lord and your path forward. The phrase I shared with her was that sign, remove the rock from your shoe rather than learning to limp comfortably. Take the weight off your back before learning to get along with it on. Get rid of the burden. We've all been on a hike. While you're hiking, you get a little rock in your shoe, a little something. And so you walk, you try to keep up, and everything's so, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine, I'm all right. But you've got this rock in your shoe, and you know what it's like, and it hurts, and it's bugging you. And what happens when you finally stop and take your shoe off and look inside and see what's in there, see what's holding you back? Sometimes you can't find it, and sometimes you find just a little bitty speck, right? It's so tiny, and you say, why was that bugging me? But well, I had a little bigger speck in there that time, but it was, it would never sit where it really hurt, so I was having trouble limping the whole time. But remove the rock from your shoe rather than learning to limp comfortably. We don't have to limp through life. We weren't designed to limp through life. We weren't designed to carry all that extra weight. There's a verse, a passage I'd like to share with you from Matthew 6. No, I'm sorry, Matthew 11. You know the verse well. Matthew 11, verses 26 to 28. Matthew 11. No, that's not what I want. Why do I struggle so hard? Matthew. Yeah, 20. Let's start with 28. Then Jesus said to them, come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. What's the purpose of a yoke? Share. To share? Work together. To work together? It's to make life easier, right? To get the work done. It's easier to accomplish things. A yoke is not something that hinders you or that holds you back. A yoke is what makes life easier. Jesus' burden, Jesus' yoke for us makes our lives easier. It makes things so much smoother. And it makes it so much easier for us to pull ahead in His kingdom. God has a plan. He doesn't want us hindered by all those, hindered by all the weight, all the things that can hold us back. He wants to set us free. He wants us to walk free in His kingdom. Hebrews chapter, I had it right there. Yeah, there it is. Still there. Hebrews chapter 12. One more time. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And let us run with endurance the race God has set up before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. Because of the joy awaiting Him, He endured the cross, disregarding the shame. And now He's seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. That's what we want. God has so much for us. There's pain that we carry that may be hidden, but let it go. Jesus wants to take it. He wants to set us free. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for your work in our hearts. Thank you for the opportunity I had to meet Linda and to minister to her. And pray that you will continue to bless and work in her heart and her life. And bless us each, Lord. There are things that hinder us, that slow us down, that weigh us down, burdens that we carry, that we don't need to, that we weren't designed to. that you didn't fit us for that, that we're designed to be free and to have life, and you have so much life for us. We open our hearts to you. Continue your work in us, and may we find the freedom that you have and the life that you have for each one of us. Thank you for your blessing, and you're walking and working in each of our hearts. In Jesus' name, amen.